There it is. The reshell. That's the line where I usually shoot. Yeah, it's got to break in a little. I just redid the plunger rod shaft, and yeah, I got an hour-long video for that. Bear with me, Nerf fans. Okay, so let's see here. You guys all saw probably the Rebel Messenger, how it shot. Well, this is on this blaster where that one ends, where this one begins. If you guys all know that line in the middle right there, that's about 134. So then keep going from here. We're all the way past this thing. All the way in the middle of this guy's driveway. Look at that. That's about, let's say, maybe 145. And then we have another one right here. However, this one bounced actually on the grass over here, and it ended up here. As where this one bounced probably about here and ended up there. So I'd say it's done about 140. It's got to break in. I mean, I've seen this thing shoot darts all the way to that white mailbox. But give it a few hundred rounds. It will party. Peace out. Oh, by the way, distant shot. I'm going from the true where the dart landed. Look at that. Look at that. See the blaster on top of the silver car, my car? Yeah. No shit. But hey, each to his own. So here we have a brand new Fire Strike. Okay? Brand new Nerf Fire Strike, a Type 2 Fire Strike with the pattern on them. We're going to cut this out. I can't tell you how many of these I've actually cut out of the package. At least 30, maybe 40. Either mods I've done or reshells like this for my pistols. And put in mind, I have more than one Fire Strike. I've got 6 Fire Strikes. And all but one of them, need to be reshelled from time to time. I should just buy a whole fuckload of these is what I should do. But, you know what? I'm stubborn. Okay, so the Fire Strike's out of the pack. Oh, they're just too weak. Every time I fire this, I'm like, God, you know? Okay. Well, enough of that commentary. Let's go take this apart. Now, on this, I keep the shell and I keep the barrel. That way, if I have something that breaks or future builds, I'm going to probably lose that and that since I'm missing it on that. Simply being in my stuff. When it was in battle, it wasn't missing. And I'm probably going to trade the screws. So that I have brand new screws that aren't stripped or anything like that. Okay. You may notice something about the normal Fire Strike compared to an R-Spec, is that the R-Spec doesn't have the orange part on it. Well, there's a story behind that. Back before I glued my whole assembly, my entire barrel assembly in one piece like this one is.
Avast virus database has been updated.
Ah, what is it with these virus programs, this and that, all? Well, whatever. Okay, I took them out so I can see the joints, because I noticed when the joints were out, it wasn't firing as well on the original R-Spec design. Well, one day I just decided to take it out, but I kept it that way. 1, because I thought it looked cool, and 2, because it does increase the airflow to the back of the plunger. One of the secrets of the Ultra Match that people don't understand is a very simple concept, is that you're moving air from the front of the plunger into the barrel, but you are also moving air from the back of the plunger from the shell of the blaster. It's a concept that many people don't get. That if you're moving a piston that is pushing air forward, it's also pulling air from the back. It's quite important. I don't know what's going on with this right now. Hold on. Okay. It's just real tight. Okay. 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 Let's see. Expect this video to be long. I may cut it up into parts. Okay, so there's our fire strike right there. You may notice on my inside of mine that a lot of these pins are cut off because the barrel is free floating from the front. It is not mounted to anything in here. This only just holds it in. But on this, it's held in. Basically, if you're running a blaster that power, this will all get knocked out. So you really want to work on it differently. Okay, so I'm going to take the front assembly out. I'm going to take out the plunger rod. There it is. There's the plunger rod. Nice, sharp new catch on it. And I'm going to keep this assembly. And I'm going to take everything else. I'm going to put it all back. Except this. Over here. And that. Okay, very good. If I ever find a part that's worn out, even a shell, I'll just reuse it. Oh, and I want to put this in, of course. Right. So that next time I want to redo a barrel, or somebody orders a barrel, or I need to reshell the outside of it, or I want to do something like crazy, like put a Magnus tube and 23 kilograms of spring in it. Yeah, you got it. I'm going to take out all my springs. Oh, I think that dog is at it again. Okay. There it is. I'll work on it later. Okay. So, here it is. We have our plunger rod. I'm going to lose the seal. Put it over here. Okay. And here's the important part. You basically have to snap this out, whole thing, these three little pins, and you have to seal the outside of it. So what happens is when you pour epoxy in there, it locks it in. I've never had one fail on me yet. But I need a small little screwdriver to pull that off. Okay, so what you gotta do here is you gotta take this assembly right here, and you have to go between the three little pegs. Do not worry if you break them. If you break them, it gets buried in that sea of epoxy anyway. And you want to slowly go around the three little pins and pry them very slowly. It's very important that you watch your work. Don't worry about how mangled you make this end. However, you do want to kind of keep a top end over there, so when you put epoxy in there, it locks in real good. Okay? You want to go around the entire assembly, like so. Okay? The idea is just to pop this whole assembly off. Because if you don't, this thing will never handle 18 kilograms of force. There's just no way, okay? If it doesn't come out, rinse and repeat, try again. Just keep trying. Just keep rolling. A knife works too, but generally I frown on knives because if you slip, you're going to cut yourself. But I've done it with knives. Okay, there we go. Yank it off. Try to yank it off. Remember, this has got Nerf lube all over it too. And after this, I gotta wash it so that it adheres to the epoxy. But all in good time. Now, do you notice how the Nerf spring falls, but the one I use goes all the way to the front there? That's the version 2 Retaliator spring from Black Tactical. Okay, so now you see the process. I'm going to do this with the screen up. There it is. It's out. Okay, so one, I got a plunger rod that is bent like a question mark. 2, this is all hollow. 3, I need a spacer on this. So let's put this aside for now. Don't worry about how mangled the front is. In the end, it ain't going to matter. Okay, but I got 4 posts. Everybody misses this. I don't understand. Everybody who makes an ultra match, tries to make an ultra match, forgets that there's 4 posts, and for springs to clear, you have to remove these 4. Okay, you still have an outer ring that when I take my Swarmfire Orange Modworks 8K, it's going to lock it in place. So this works as your front spring separator on the outside, and this works as the rear. So the spring can never dance on you, which is real nice. I modded it that way. But you have to take these 4 posts out. Well, out with the flat file. They actually don't take that long to do. With these, you can regulate how loose or how tight your version 2 Black Tactical spring is, or how tight any spring is. You can simply notch the front of the post, and you can make it tighter or looser. However, if it's too tight, it won't lock up. So why did I make an ultra match? One, I wanted something that was high yield, strong prime, single prime, and I didn't care how disposable it was or not. Nowadays, I'm fighting a little bit more with the Rebel blasters, or even better yet, that brand new one that I got, which is actually a Nerf Messenger. I like it, but there are a few problems with it. Number one is the grip. It's hollow. It doesn't give a pistol shooter like me much of a reference where the gun's pointed if I'm not looking, and a lot of times when I fire, I am not looking. I'm just firing. Number two, it doesn't have a straight inline sight. Even like the Pink Crush, if you take out the accessory rail tab on it, you take that out, it has a front sight on the front of it. So you got front sight and rear sight, and you can actually aim that thing, and it's fairly accurate, especially if you're using X2 dart domes. Okay, there is another trick you can do with this, which is really fascinating with the tabs. The tabs define the spacing of the inner spring, and pretty much in its orientation to the outer spring. Okay, you can make this so that if, let's say you want the inner spring to be a little higher, you can dive this whole thing out, right? Or maybe you want a little bit of that curve. Like right here, I put a little notch here, so it's farther back, so the spring is going to bow like that. That way it misses my catch, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. So just in case you're going, hey man, Chris, your spring isn't even. Actually, I'm actually trying not to make it even. I'm doing that for a good reason. Because I want the spring to be a little differently oriented. So I want the other two on the side to be flush with this. See this now? You guys see this? Yeah. I want a little differently oriented. With all the follies of the Fire Strike, the fact you can't just screw the head back on or off, all that stuff, it is a masterpiece, I have to admit. Okay, so now I'm going to take my inner spring. Okay, so watch this. I I want to make sure that this flows evenly. Ah, not falls out of my hand. Okay. So I've got a little higher, a little lower. And also put in mind where your spring bunch is. Also dictated by where your coils end. So for example, if this is going to dive on me, this is going to climb on me because the coil ends here and the coil ends here. So if I want it to climb away from the catch, which is desirable on the inner spring, that's it. So I'm doing everything I can in my power to make it so that the coil climbs instead of dives. There it is. Now, here's what I have to do next. I have to take the inside of this. I told you these are a lot of work, and I have to rough it up on the inside because I'm going to put some epoxy cement in there. So I'm just taking a pair of scissors and I'm roughing that up. I'm roughing not just the end of it, but the inside of it, and I'm putting a few little sharp little grooves in there as well, so that the epoxy binds to it and it doesn't fall off. Okay. I do it on the front one, the rear one not so much. And put in mind when you bend it, you're also going to bend this plastic inward, and it's going to lock it in pretty good. Okay. That's a ticket, Sam. That's a ticket. Okay, so now I have to go and I have to wash this part, which is the plunger rod, and this with some detergent soap. Break out a paper plate and pull out some epoxy. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So here it is, right here. Oh, those are my mixing sticks. I'm not gonna torch the whole thing, you know. It's all, if it goes bad, you know, like Jimi Hendrix did to his guitar. I'm just gonna sit here and do this. Now, we like to just go and assemble the whole thing and get it done, but we do have to reinforce the plunger itself. Put in mind that this and this actually on here make it excellent. But okay, so the last part, I roughed this all up, got it all ready for epoxy. So what I do, I clear everything off like so. Okay. And I put in a plate, and I mix my 2-part epoxy. This is 15-minute sets epoxy, so it's not going to set right away, but it still sets quite quickly. Okay. Trying to undo this cap here, hopefully it didn't polymerize on me. Oh, good. Okay, so match head. Okay, here's the hardener right here. You guys looking? You guys watching? Okay. The resin is usually thicker. But not today, it's too fucking hot. I want to take equal dabs of each one. If I'm going to go hot on anything, it's definitely the hardener. Okay. A little bit there, a little bit there. Okay, good. Now, when I take it, I'm going to take these two. I usually do it like this. Go down like so. Throw the two around part of a plate like so. Remember, we got plenty of set. We got 15 minutes of set. Epoxy loves it when you straight mix it like that. You see that right there? You just take it. You do that. There it is. Okay, that is enough right there. That's enough to polymerize. I'm going to use a different matchstick so I don't get any partially polymerized epoxy here. How are we looking on the screen? Okay, so we're going to take this. We're going to take our plunger. And we're just going to dive it. Now, put in mind we don't want any epoxy drying on our catch, and we do not want to scratch, nick, or mess up our catch while we're doing this. Otherwise, in ultra match terms, it is useless. But you've got to backfill the entire thing and start from one side and just work your way over to the other. Okay, like that. And notice I'm putting this over to get rid of the excess, and don't worry, this isn't going to set anytime soon. Okay, Now that we're getting close to backfilling it, I'm putting it forward. Now I'm not bending it or anything. There is a trick. There's a certain time with epoxy but you want to start from one side and fill it, and then you just want to let it get filled so you're avoiding air bubbles. You don't want any air bubbles in this thing. The side ones, I don't care. And as you can see, when I was taking this apart, I greatly needed those little side vents. Well, so it would have been impossible to take it down. Alright. But in mind, the back is a little harder to do than the front, and the reason is because it is smaller vents. Okay, so our epoxy is still very wet, as you can see. Go in and get some paper towels, lay it flat, and I usually use the other plunger catch to do that, just to lay it flat while it's drying. You know, right when I need a paper towel, they're all used up, so I had to open up another one. Oh, listen to that, folks. The joy of upper middle class America right there. You think you get away from the city, you get away from all the noise and stuff? Wrong. Okay, so what I gotta do, and I'm gonna be real careful with this, because this is still wet. And I got my notebook in here. Okay, so I got it. I gotta keep it flat. I'm gonna clean up my groove on my trigger catch. Make sure there isn't any on it. You got to make sure that the epoxy is not anywhere you don't want. Now put in mind, see that little bubble right there? We want that. Later on, we want to file that down and get it to fit perfectly. The main reason of reinforcing the R-Spec plunger is actually not to reinforce it. It is to dictate how high and how low it sits in the blaster when it's in full prime and what position it's at. This is a great countermeasure to bobbing the plunger downward and causing the catch not to hit perfectly. As a matter of fact, the best. Other than the way I position the springs. The best. Okay, so we're done with our epoxy for now. We're going to move this over here. Okay, I'm going to take our trigger catch right here, okay, our other one, which I'm not using, but I want to dry off because I don't want any epoxy on it. Which is a mute point anyway. Oh, and by the way, just real quick, see how that one is inletted? Can you guys see that? It's got a little bit of a slant on the inside, and a stock one does not. Yeah, you're going to make an Ultra Match fix that. Any blaster. Any one. Okay. So we're going to take the one I'm not going to use, which actually is the new one. And we're going to lay it flat. We're going to let the epoxy just sit there and cure for a little while. So until then, I'll see you in a few. Okay, so here it is. All the bubbles are coming out of it because the resin on it is nice and catalyzed. Now I'm going to take my stick right here and I'm going to wait for this to get tacky. When it's tacky, what happens is the isomers are releasing from the resin, okay? And this is how two-part epoxy polyester all works. Instead of a solvent evaporating out of it, it has endpoints of the atoms that are sort of working as bumpers. A hardener, what it does is it releases those bumpers. Usually they're styrene or some other composite, and it makes it so now it bonds. So think of it as, okay, you have styrene and styrene. It's not going to bond. It's going to move. It's going to stay liquid. But as soon as it releases, boom. And that is how a resin actually works. So at this point, what's happening is it's getting tacky, but it's not quite there. Now put in mind I had a point where I do straighten it out. Well, it's about now, actually. So I'm going to wipe off my hands a little, okay? And here it is. There's my rod. And I'm going to take it, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to, bend it. And I'm going to put a little bit of a bend on it, a little bit of a flex, until this whole thing catalyzes completely. What this does is it straightens it out. Because this is bending in, it also locks in the epoxy in there, so it can't fall out, because the plastic is bowing in as I'm pushing this. It also fixes the position of the bow, which straightens out the whole rod where the catch is. Now back here, if this is a little bowed, like right here where it's not reinforced, it doesn't matter. Where it really matters is where the catch actually is. Because as you're pulling it, if it's a little bowed, that's okay. If it's locked where it's locked in, that's not okay. That's going to cause this catch to be crooked, and it's not going to hold as much of a yield correctly. And on this blaster, considering it's a toy, and it's holding as much power as a beam and air rifle, it needs, I would say an above average beam and air rifle, not like a Cro-Magnon or a Kodiak or anything. It needs as much holding power as it can get. And if you're going to play competitively, like I do, you take every edge you're going to get. Okay. So you got to hold it like this as the whole thing bonds. So now our plunger rod is cured. It's pretty straight. But before it cures completely, we want to take the first part of it off. This dictates how far it goes back. So you want to sit here and you want to, you want to file it before it gets completely hardened. It's good to file gently in one direction. This is always high for me, so I want to file this front part down first. You see this right here? I don't want to really get epoxy shavings all over my notebook, so that's what you do. Another thing you can do, grab a pair of scissors, and you can just file it down. Just trim it as such. But I prefer sanding it. Because it's a lot easier to file soft epoxy than it is to file hard epoxy. Yes, I know. Chris, your videos are boring. Yes, they are boring. But they work. And I'm proven to work. But this video with an ultra match, yeah, definitely boring. And there's good reason for it. They really do take this much work to get right. Okay. If you do it, it's too soft, it'll pop right out. If you do it, it's too hard, it'll be a bitch to file. So, there we are. So, I'm going to continue bending this, and it's pretty knocked down now. I'm going to wait for it to completely harden. Alright, so there is our plunger rod. It is nice and hard. So now we're going to take our shell. We're going to take the actual plunger catch we're going to use. We're going to take a plunger spring. And it does not have to be the heavy duty one to do this test. As a matter of fact, you don't want it to be a heavy duty one. It will give you all sorts of nightmares. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to test the plunger distance on this. Okay? You take it like so, like that. You take your brand new plunger rod, you pull it back off the table if you need to. What you're doing is you're making sure that it clears. Okay, there it is, right there. That's it. There it is. Click So like that, goes forward, back perfectly. Okay. Alright, we don't need to sand this anymore. Except I may sand the front a little, just for shits and giggles. I want you to take a good note on the fire strike where the plunger actually, or the plunger rod actually lands with the plunger catch. Get over here, stupid. Come on. There we go. I want you to take a good note of this. Okay? When I lock this back and I'm holding everything in since it's pop out, look where it is. It's right at the end of this over here. That's where it's going to rest. Okay? Right there. Alright. So let's take this out. And let's get to the rest of this, huh? Let's get to cooking. Alright. Here's our plunger rod, our plunger catch that was in here. We want to clean it up real nice before we put this back in, because once it's together, we're probably not going to get to it. You may notice that I do an adjustment on these so that it dives a little farther. There's your normal one. There's this. And that the inlet is also filed on the front. That's why your normal one is not filed at all. You guys see that, right? Okay. So, there's this. There's that. Where's our springs? That's a normal one. This is only half of one. Okay, there's only half of my spring set up. There is more. Now, now this is what I use. I use a flat pair of pliers to govern my spring distance here. Where did I get all of these one handy dandy pliers? Well, they're Cobalt, for one. For two, my roommate gave them to me for Christmas one year. And they are, they're phenomenal. They really work well. It's the right tool for a job. You don't want your front coil diving, because if your top coil dives, it's going to, of course, dictate where the inner coil goes. Okay. Put this in. Again, we want lower coil to lower coil, and on this we have upper coil to upper coil. Actually, upper coil to lower coil. But yeah, that's how we want it. We want it. You want to kind of make a balance. You don't want all the coils to all go low or all go high, because that will sort of throw off your plunger a bit. Here's your dual spring assembly right here. You want to see where it lands before you actually do this. You want to make sure it crosses it just fine, and it does. Of course, the only problem is I have to widen this a little bit as it looks, so get this up. If this is too narrow, just take a pair of pliers, okay, like so, and just pull on it, like so. Okay. More distance. So that clears the plunger rod a little better. Okay. And once, here's the thing: if you don't get it all in perfectly, when you do it, when you root tool this, you're sunk. So therefore, you want to make sure it's in there perfectly right. You could do things like reposition springs and this and that, but you don't have enough room in a fire strike plunger to just coil the spring out. Also, the rod material is so it's so flimsy that what will happen if you do that is you'll probably scratch the shit out of it anyway. So you don't want to do that. Okay. But put in mind, this sticks out a bit. This is good. This makes the plunger hit real hard, which is why, of course, this plunger rod has a 5K Roach Marburg spring, so I cannot possibly dry fire it and break it. However, it is a bitch to get on. It's worth its weight in gold performance, however. Okay, so we're going to take our old epoxy plate right here, okay? We're going to go to the original one here. Make sure you do this outside when you do it. No, I'm not your daddy, but I'm just saying. Okay, first you just want to get your initial roll going. That's it. go a little hot on the hardener. Okay, so you just want 2 little dabs, like so. Now put in mind, it's binary fluid, okay? Before it is mixed, it is whatever, okay? Okay, so here's the trick right here. Take some Teflon tape, wrap it around the whole thing. First one you just roll around. On the second one you tighten real hard. Okay, because by the first roll done, it locks it in. Okay. Now break it off like so. Take the inside of it and trim it, because you are going to be. This is going to be a full of epoxy in a second. The way I do it, especially with the 15-minute epoxy, it fills in all the gaps, it fills in everything. It makes a nice little interlock. Okay. So let's take our spring assembly out real quick. So this is going to be fun. I'm going to take the head of my plunger, like so, lay it down flat, and I am going to put a hole right through it, like that. Okay. Now there's a hole in our plunger. Epoxy seeps in there, interlocks. It's great. Okay. So our first step is just to take this 15-minute epoxy, as such. Stir it together. Yeah. Well, that's actually way too much harder. Hold on. Okay. And we're going to use our downhill method again. Stirring epoxy. Well, this time it's just a little bit of epoxy. Now put in mind, when you stir, don't just stir with a stick. Stir with the entire stick. Stir with the whole thing. May it be a popsicle stick. May it be whatever. Okay? It much more evenly stirs epoxy that way. You can use this epoxy to laminate fiberglass too, which I'm going to do on a lot of my tanks. Now, take it right here. Now, put in mind, what side did we want up? We wanted the high side up, like right here. Okay, so we want the high side up on this. Okay, let's take some epoxy. Let's coat the inside like so. We got a little bit of epoxy. Now, this is tough because you got to do this when your springs are in it too. It is kind of difficult. Now, put in mind, don't worry if you get a little spillage or whatever. Okay. Where's our high side? Our high side's right here. Okay. There's our high side. That way our springs sit a little bit. Let's get this over here. Okay. Now, I'm going to unify these. Oh, whoops. Huh. Not just yet. Now we got to unify these. And put in mind, we got a big spring at the front of it too. It's definitely not a rush job. Push those two together. Boom. There it is. Now I got epoxy inside of it, right there, as such. Okay. I also got weight on it because I got the version 2. I got the version 2 spring in there. Wait a minute. I had to emergency pull this off. Why? Because my version 2 spring wasn't where I wanted it. Okay, no problem. No problem. Try again. So the nice thing about having 15 minutes a set, guys, is that if you run into a problem like that, you can correct it. There it is. Okay, so now I got my top coil here. The end is facing up here. I got the inner coil here. The end is facing this way. So this way and this way, so it's a little more even now. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to throw some resin. We're going to throw some hardener. And we are going to fill this whole thing. Alright, once again, downhill method. Bring it back up, like so. Bring it down, use your entire stick to get it. And we're going to make this a swimming pool full of epoxy. It's going to look really cool. And I've never lost a plunger head yet to this method of doing it. What you have here is a non-metallic plunger head entirely. It weighs nothing. It has a very, very high internal velocity. And so you don't have wing nuts, you don't have washers, anything, okay? So on a lot of your snap pulls and stuff, one of the big problems I see is really they should be using composite parts. It's a matter of taste, mind you, I understand. But I can't tell you how many designs I've seen where they are losing so much speed and power to simply using the wrong hardware, or the hardware that's not the lightest. Sure, it's sturdy, but I mean, hey, we're modders, right? It breaks, like this right here. You can always do it, and that's another reason why I don't care at the Ultra Match. You have to replace the plungers every once in a while. Hey, I'm a modder. I can fix it. Not a problem. Don't worry about the sloppiness of putting epoxy on. The problem is getting, the real thing is getting it on there in a timely manner. Okay, and getting all the air bubbles out so the whole thing is swimming in a swimming pool of epoxy. I want this while the epoxy is nice and loosey-goosey. That's right, because it will take all the air bubbles out. Another way of doing this would be, of course, putting this in a vacuum pump, but I'm sorry, but I'm not NASA or Bradley Mathis, so the 2K king of all time. Okay, it definitely always will be Mr. Master of the Lathe and the 2K king. Go Bradley. Okay, I'm a little bit different of a modder. I'm a little bit more like a Carroll Shelby. All right. But Carroll Shelby never even modded Nerf guns, so. But it's just my style of development and manufacturing. So here it is. It's right there. Boom. I got the high side of the plunger head on the inside, so that the whole spring on the front's got to lift a little, so that it's going to avoid my plunger catch better. Okay, I got two more air bubbles. You see the air bubbles on it. Okay, you just take your stick. That's right. Just take it out. Ah, hand shaking again. I need some more potassium, but oh well. Yeah, I have issues with electrolytes, folks. I do. Okay, so there it is. So every time I see an air bubble like that, I poke it out of there. I want it to be a nice solid head when I do it. And I take my excess and I just, like that. Okay? Like so. Just around the Teflon. Now put in mind, epoxy does not stick to Teflon. So this is nice. If I make a mistake, I can just rip all of this off. There it is. So the idea is not a bonding agent. It is a locking agent. I am taking epoxy, I am sinking the entire plunger head assembly, so that what it's going to do is it's going to encircle around every little crevice. As you know, if you take this out, you have two little plastic tabs on the front here, where, let me see if you can see it on another one. Nope, you can't. Where basically the epoxy goes under. You also have a whole shelf under there where it goes under, and a bunch of tabs. And so if you make a molded piece of epoxy in there, it's never coming out. Even if this breaks loose from the plastic, which actually chemically it probably will, it will still hold it all together. So we're going to let this dry, and then it's off to the next process. So we're curing now. I got all the air out. I'm going to take some parchment paper, some wax paper, and I'm going to put it over the whole thing while it cures. So put in mind, epoxy doesn't need air to cure. It is a chemical releasing of monomers. I called them isomers earlier, sorry, it's monomers. Okay, so what I have now is something flat. It's going to be easier to file in the front. So what we get is a nice thing. And don't worry if you got a little bit on the insides there. Just as long as it doesn't drab over into this groove, you're fine. But put in mind, this can all rip off, because what happens is you file it and then you put more Teflon tape on it. Okay. Okay. One thing an Ultra Match has is a near perfect seal, if not perfect. So now our epoxy is nice and dry. Well, it's not completely cured, but it's dry enough to sand. So here I'm going to take a sip of my paper, parchment paper, and get a flat file fine flat file. File right through. Around my edges first. Which is nice because that also gets your sharp edges off the plunger head. Okay, and I'm going to take it. So I wanted this before it's too hard, because of course you know resin is easy to file when it's soft. As I explained earlier, I'm going to keep filing until I have no paper left. Okay. Sometimes I just let it sit there. This time, especially with this blaster, I actually put a piece of wax paper on there. Okay. I don't pad this for the simple reason that I already have a mechanism for the padding, as everybody remembers. I only have 27% on this, so I'm going to make this quick, okay? So, here we are. Get out of there. Okay, I'm going to take my silicone grease. It's almost all used up. Make sure I don't step on those edges. And I am going start packing my seal. Okay. Now, here we are. Put in mind, this is a high level of discernment, yes, but it's this level of discernment that makes me a good player out there. Okay. And my blasters, good blasters. Okay. So, here we got the head right here. I'm going to take my thumbnail, we're going to scrape off whatever off the Durlin to make that nice and sweet. Okay, I'm going to take whatever's left of my silicone grease. I'm going to just put it in there. I'm putting it under the Teflon, which is interesting. I'm putting it under the Teflon tape that I'm about to roll on the rest of this. And there's a good reason why. Okay, so now I got my Teflon tape. Okay, I'm going to grab a piece of Teflon tape. Keep thinking that's like, hey Mr. Cartaya, this is the BCBD. Throw down your weapons and surrender. Guess not, huh? Okay, so as you see, it's making a nice front seal. Put in mind that this does make it hard to prime the first time you prime it in the day, but I like it that way. It just makes a nice seal. Teflon tends to stick to the front. Okay, if you don't like that, you can just cushion the front with some felt or whatever, but I don't like doing that. I don't like doing that. I have my reasons. Okay, so I'm putting gads. We're on 7 layers so far of Teflon tape. You may be noticing my little pattern on the front here. It's an interesting pattern, ain't it? Sure, that's nice and clean. Okay. So now I got my O-ring. Okay. And I'm going to get the rest of my silicone grease. And I'm going to just dab the whole thing in it. So let's take a matchstick, get the rest out of my puny little thing of Orange Modworks silicone grease. Yeah, I need to order some more. Sort of running short on a lot of supplies lately. Silicone grease being one of them. Okay. Normally I would drown this in silicone grease. I would just drown this thing, but since I don't have that much, and hopefully my battery on my computer doesn't go out while I'm doing this. I was down to 27% when I started this. Okay, so take our finger, roll it around. This gets in the Teflon and actually makes it more conform silicone grease. Okay. Now I'm going to take my O-ring. I'm going to throw it in there. Okay. We're going to compare it to the tube now. And I'm going to go like this. I have it out like so, flat as it would be in the blaster. Here, hold on. Let me show you. I look like Kenny G playing clarinet, don't I? Alright, that's good. That's good. Okay, so we're going to take this out. I'll throw a couple more layers of Teflon. And, okay. It's a little hard to do because my hands are a little sticky. I just remember Teflon compresses over time. So now we have a little bit more silicone grease between the Teflon. So really it's Teflon, many layers of Teflon tape, silicone grease. Many layers of Teflon tape, silicone grease. Many layers of Teflon tape, silicone grease. It makes for a nice, good, tight seal. Putting a couple more in here. Yeah, there is a heavy amount of Teflon tape on these blasters. Okay. Look, see all that right there? Okay, so I'm going to go like that, like so. Okay, there it is. Now, where is my lithium grease? Lithium grease, lithium grease, lithium grease. Get out of there. I don't have a lot of time. Lithium grease. Okay. Cut down the side here. Yeah, I've been that broke lately. I think we've all been there, but lately I've been real broke. Okay, so let's grab this over here. Lithium grease, lithium grease, lithium grease, lithium grease, lithium grease. Put it on here. So go out and get some more grease. That would be a big help. Okay, so I'm going to put it on the outside of my O-ring here. And on the front of the plunger as well. There's still quite a lot of grease in the plunger tube itself. But, okay. Okay. Alright. Yes, do try to use a brand new tube or at least partially full tube of lithium grease instead of trying to do it like I'm doing right now. Just want that example there. Fill the entire inside, pack the entire plunger tube with lithium grease. But in mind, I use silicone grease for the thread tape, but I use lithium grease for the inside of the plunger tube. They are compatible. They don't have a problem. But one's just better for the other, as I found. Okay. And I want to put a little bit of lithium grease on the catch. If I can, before the batteries go dead on this notebook. Hold on. A little dab is all it takes. Just a little on the catch there. Yeah, there we are. And we put one on the actual trigger catch as well. Oh, here we go. We found a gold mine. And next we'll go inside for the very last phase. Yay, this video is almost done. Woo! So for the last part, assembly. Put in mind that there's certain things I'm not going to do, like trim this off, because that's a personal touch. Have it sort of like an AR-15 handle. But I'm going to do it on mine. I'm going to do it later. And there's just certain things like that I'm not going to do on the video. Okay. That personalization, painting, all that stuff, that's all you. So anywho, here we go. I want to go over trigger catches. Very important that you understand this notion. Okay. I'm keeping the original shelf for now. When this thing wears down to shit, I am going to take off the tabs. I am going to redraw my logo on there, and I'm going to do all this stuff. Oh yeah, this is one of my vids. And we're shooting live right now. Do you want to say hello?
I can't. I'm taking them to see the balloon show right now.
No problem.
But another time for sure.
Everybody from China to Germany would see you if you did. So, yeah. Well, she doesn't want to be a star. That's her business. Okay, so this is your normal trigger catch. Okay, it's not very strong. It's maybe 3/4 of a kilogram. This will never take the ferocity of that and hold it. There's no way. So you got to go better. One way to do is to file all 4 points of this down and use a retaliator detent spring. This is the little ball that goes between your barrel and your shell, and it's a very strong spring in the retaliator, but it's not for the recon, I don't believe. Okay, you can use one of these. What I personally like to do myself is to use something that's like the retaliator feed door spring and an orange Modworks trigger catch spring. And I coil the two together, as so. Very nice spring combination. Put in mind, this thing flies out like rockets when you take it out. So, here's what you gotta do. Just base the shell. Now put in mind, there's no lights, there's no anything. The front of here is a giant air intake for the back of this, okay? Okay, now if you notice, it's sort of like a pull system. So what you gotta do, and this is hard to do because this is a high yield blaster that's got a longer spring than the plunger rod length. Okay, and don't worry about the plunger rod, it's on there. Okay, so you wanna line up your trigger catch first, line up your catch plate after that. I'll make sure, the barrel's not, okay. You can see it's a chore. It's just such a strong build. It's just such a chore. Okay, so then your catch plate is going to go forward on you. You want to take a screwdriver, put it in like so. Voila, there it is. Now if it bends like this, which that just did, take your catch and adjust it. There it is. You want this as high as possible to avoid the catch on the plunger rod. Okay? But hey, today I guess you can see why these are so goddamn expensive. Yep. A lot of work. A lot of man hours. A lot of work. The seal on the plunger head is probably going to flatten out over the next few days, and I'll have to redo it. But that's okay. That's just packing the seal in there. If this pops out on you like it just did, and you could be sitting here for an hour doing this. No joke. I mean, I've been working with these blasters as long as I have, and I've gotten better at it because you have to deal with getting everything in. Okay, and don't worry about your catch spring until all this is in. Otherwise, you just, yeah. But a lot of people ask me a lot of things. Hey, there's this wrong with your Ultra Match. Why don't you just take it apart? This is why. Because this is really hard to put back together because the spring in here is actually bigger than it's intended to be, but it has thin enough coils that it will fit when it's fully compact back. Remember, this is made for a retaliator. This is like 100 millimeters. The draw length, the normal spring on here is only about 80. So you only need about a 75, 80 millimeter spring to work in here. And I have one that's 100, so that it hits harder when it goes out. But the thing, it's lasers, man. It's great. Okay. So, while you're holding all this together, and if I screw this up, believe me, I'll take this new trigger, thank you. And one more thing I forgot. Give me a second. I'm going to cut this out. Give me a second. Okay, I am back, and I got a lower trigger and an upper trigger. Even though the lower trigger does absolutely nothing right now, I still keep it in for cosmetic reasons. Put in mind, this goes forward because it's a floating barrel system. As you guys know, it's all just governed by this front here, and it's all just governed spacing-wise by this Velcro tape. That's how I do things. How are things in Cookie Land, Mom? All right.
Except I still haven't found them again.
Well, you didn't find them again? I'm gonna take this top tip. You didn't find them again?
No.
Ah, man. Okay, so I'm gonna take this top tip. Well, they're limited edition cookies. We all know that. we were contemplating a Nerf Mars Welcome if they were not Nerf Mars Welcome. I'm sorry about that. Death by Nerf Blaster if they were in fact plutonium laced. Hey, that'd be a limited edition, right? Hanford's got to dump its waste somewhere. Okay. Oh, what is with this catch spring? Jeez. Okay, hold on. Let me give you a little more angle here. There we go. I may just lose this. Traditionally, on a lot of my modded blasters, I don't even have this in here. Can I get in there? Oh, yeah, nice. Okay. Okay. Keep in mind, this is really tough to put back together. Okay. Okay, so I get the back catch first when I put a blaster back together. Okay. Always first. I always want to get the back side. Now look how far the plunger rod goes forward. Okay, so I got rid of that last ½ an inch right there, and it's all going into the plunger. It's a lot more area when you actually go and fire. Okay. My pride and joy 009, which is in effect a re-engineered 001. Which everybody knows the story what happened with that one. Caught fire. I talk about it, and some people don't believe it, but hey, I was there. And believe me, I was in tears. Luckily, I made 2 of these instead of just one. And I took the parts off the first one, and I made this one. I gave the second one to my best friend for his birthday. And there we are. Alright, so I'm not going to be able to fire this until the epoxy completely takes a set, pull it, anything. If I have trouble with it, I'm gonna have to troubleshoot it. Okay. Let's take these 2 apart here. I don't want to stress my epoxy at all. Voila. There it is. We are back in business. So I'm going to wait for this to go, and I'm going to that war at Everett Park, San Pedro. Come heavy.